We are checking out the Beelink SER5 with AMD Ryzen 5560U processor in our review today. You know the drill, there's the unboxing and overview along with some system and gaming benchmarks. In the box we first have the user manual, which is in multiple languages including English, German, Spanish and Italian. There's also a quick guide on how to install a 2.5-inch drive inside the mini PC. Underneath is the Beelink SER5 5560U. We will show it in more detail shortly. Inside the cardboard box is a power supply. We will include the correct adapter for your country. There are two HDMI cables. One is short and is useful for when you mount the mini PC behind your display. And here is the mounting bracket for attaching the mini PC to your display. Next we have a packet of screws for the bracket and for securing the internal drive. And last but not least, there is a SATA ribbon for when installing the drive. The Beelink SER5 5560U measures around 4.9 by 4.4 by 1.6 inches and weighs around 430 grams. On the front there are two USB 3 and one USB Type-C port for easy connecting peripherals too. Beside those are a 3.5mm headphone jack and the power button. On the back are a gigabit Ethernet port for fast data transfer. There are two USB 2 ports and two HDMI ports for dual monitor display. The bottom can be opened by unscrewing the 4 screws. You can upgrade the RAM and storage as well as installing a 2.5-inch drive. The Beelink SER5 has the AMD Ryzen 5 5560U with 6 cores and 12 threads running up to 4 GHz at 15 watts TDP. For graphics, it has the Radeon Graphics with 6 cores running up to 1600 MHz. The SER5 comes with 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM, which is upgradable to a maximum of 64 gigs. There's 500 gigs of NVMe SSD, which is upgradable to a maximum of 2 TB. For wired communications, there's the gigabit Ethernet port, and for wireless, there's the fast Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2. For the fan noise and temperature test, we run Cinebench for 10 minutes and measure them both. We got a maximum of 56 decibels and 64 degrees respectively. This is tested in an office environment of around 23 degrees and 40 decibels. As always, we start the system benchmarks with PassMark. PassMark pushes the CPU, GPU, RAM and storage to their maximum in a series of tests. We get a final score of 4,441. We will be comparing the benchmark results with other models further in. PCMark is a series of more natural tests covering day-to-day tasks from web browsing to image processing. We got a final score of 5,467. You can read a more in-depth breakdown of the test scores on our blog post linked in the description. Cinebench tests the CPU to see its performance with either single or multi-core tests. We got a multi-core test score of 7,660. We usually see very good scores for AMD processors on Cinebench, and this mini PC is no exception. 3DMark tests the CPU and GPU to see how well they work together in video processing tasks. We got a final score of 1,080, which was a little lower than what we expected. CrystalDIskMark runs a series of tests on the storage to see its performance across different reading and writing patterns. We got a highest read speed of 2,552 and highest write speed of 1,905 megs a second. Overall, the Beelink SER5 5560U has some good scores across the system benchmarks. We can see that compared to the SER4 4700U, there is some back and forth between them for the highest scores. If you use software that is CPU intensive, such as working with large office documents or image or video editing, then there is a good performance increase to consider upgrading to the SER5. Compared with our recently reviewed Intel-based Beelink SEI11 Pro, we can see that again for CPU intensive tasks, the SER5 takes the lead, especially in the Cinebench results. AMD processors usually have more cores and threads, which makes these tasks a breeze. You can save yourself 5% off if you order the Beelink SER5 5560U by using the discount code SER550FF on the checkout at DroiX.co.uk or DroiX.net for worldwide orders. We start the game with benchmarks with Forza Horizon 5 running at 720p on the very low graphics settings. We get an average frame rate of 66, which is very good. Next in our benchmarks, we are running Street Fighter V at 720p on the maximum graphics settings. At the end of the first match, we get an average frame rate of 46. AMD processors are usually slower than Intel's for this game, so it's a fair score. For the Final Fantasy XIV benchmark, we are running again at 1280x720 on the maximum graphics settings. We get a final score of 4702, which puts it into the standard category. You could play the game just fine at maximum graphics settings. Next in our benchmarks is Shadow of the Tomb Raider. We have it running on the low settings at 720p. We get an average frame rate per second of 40, which is pretty good. You could play the game fine with some minor slowdowns in very busy scenes. For our final benchmark, we are pushing the Beelink SER5 with Cyberpunk, which is a high demand game. We are running at 720p on the low graphics settings and get a final average frame per second of 28.93. You probably would not want to play this game on a mini PC, but for the specification it is a good score. You can learn more and order your Beelink SER5 5560U on our stores at DroiX.co.uk and DroiX.net. Don't forget to use the discount code SER550FF when ordering. That wraps up our Beelink SER5 5560U review. We hope you have found it useful. If you have not already, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It keeps you up to date with our latest videos and helps to grow this channel. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in our next video.